And then I bent over and it just burst. You're listening to the Beat Motel Podcast, and we need to warn you that we like to use words like fuck, shit, and syndicalus, butty scrutux, angry flap, and foot biscuits. And we don't often bleep those words out, apart from because we're not complete animals. But if you understand that and you like music, then listen on. Hey, Sam's away, so Ollie's here. I should have asked if you want me to introduce you as Ollie or Anrufen.
I'm happy to be Ollie.
You're Ollie, okay.
My day-to-day capacity.
So Ollie, I know as Ollie. But I know this is. I'm speaking to the guests here. I'm not speaking to you, Ollie, because you know how I know you. I know you through being at a noise gig in Bury, I think probably initially. But because you've played in bands around Suffolk, we must have met each other a bunch of times before that time.
Yeah, I'd say that's almost certain.
And now you've very generously offered to be guest co-host for this edition of the Beat Motel Podcast.
Very big shoes to fill. Sam and Dan Callis, respectively. Fantastic hosts.
I'm trying to think what size. I don't think I've ever looked at Callis's feet a lot. He strikes me as someone whose feet might be larger than you might think they are on first glance, based on nothing.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair estimation.
I realised, like, first time on the podcast, and I've given you a comment. There's really nothing to sort of speak back on. Let's guesstimate the size of somebody else's feet.
I'm going to go with 8, and I'm sure he'll be in touch.
8, okay. Yeah, I'm going to say 8. 8's safe. 8's safe. Right, I am going to play your riff of the week, and then you're going to tell me how to say the band's name, because I can't figure it out. I'll be whistling that on the walk home. Who was that, Ollie?
That is from what I can tell, one-man Chinese metal project with a Greek name, which means hoplite, or is pronounced hoplite in English pronunciation. I forget how I came across it. It's a fantastic record that I've been listening to a lot this year. I feel like it must have been through some forum or something, but it's just so mad that I kind of had to share it at any opportunity, and this was one of them.
This sort of music used to really upset me years ago. It used to really bother me, but I kind of like it now. I like it because I think it can actually give you a lot more than a straight up kind of band just doing a verse, chorus, because it's like a complicated movie you don't really understand. You have to listen to it loads of times before you actually start to pick things out of it.
Sure.
So very entertaining. But yeah, the name I'll copy and paste it into the podcast notes, but it's one of those alphabets that I can't even get close. I can recognize the I think it starts with an H, a capital H. After that, it's just, I don't know, stuff.
If you copy and paste it in the right places, you can find it. It's fine.
Good point. Have you heard Imperium Triumphant?
I've not.
They're like a black metal version of that, and they had a song out last year that had Kenny G, the saxophonist, guesting on it. And it reminds me of a similar kind of thing. This one's a bit more floaty and a bit less black metal, but I will send you a link afterwards.
You should do. Yeah, I'd definitely get a kick out of that.
Listeners, I will put a link to the video with Kenny G in it in the show notes, because it is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. And it's a really expensive looking video as well. And you just think, I'm glad we live in a world where people can make weird, obscure, awkward black metal that has 70s and 80s saxophonists on it, and people give them money to make a proper video. Right, I'm going to play my riff of the week, and it's quite different to that. Do you know who that was, Ollie?
I don't. It's going to annoy me though because I feel like I know the vocalist.
The vocals it's a very particular voice. That's the Lemonheads.
Oh, it's the Lemonheads. Okay.
It's Lemonheads. So, and now I chose that because I wanted to choose something for Riff of the Week that is something that I know I absolutely adored as a teenager, but that I've probably either dismissed or not listened to since. And I also quite like the whistling in that. You don't get a lot of whistling in songs, do you?
You don't know. I thought the Lemonheads were one of those bands that became, or at least they became massive to me through Nirvana. I feel like Kurt Cobain was constantly kind of championing them. But were they kind of cool before Nirvana? It's like the Vaselines. I know that the Vaselines are great, but I came to the Vaselines through Kurt Cobain. So I always associate them.
In punk circles, the Lemonheads are quite controversial. And even until fairly recently, if I saw the Lemonheads being mentioned in a punk scene, it was to basically moan about them selling out and basically decry them for being awful human beings. As I loosely understand it, they were part of the punk scene very much, but I mean, Evan Dando clearly like had the star quality, like male model looks, and you know, as much as people love Cobain, well, actually, a lot of people probably do think he was incredibly good looking, but Evan Dando was really like a beautiful looking human being, and they got signed to a major. And I think the major label might have actually sacked the rest of the band and brought in a different drummer. And for their album that was really big, It's a Shame About Ray, they have Juliana Hatfield playing bass on it.
Oh, okay.
So it's not quite the usual accusation of selling out. Like, oh man, now you're on a major. It's like, whoa, actually, you got rid of the whole band, which it kind of.
You started whistling. Like I would immediately dismiss anyone for whistling. That's a line in the sand for me. Punk or otherwise.
But I always like to try and find like a link between the two riffs. So Sam's riff, or the guest riff and mine, and there's some bucket playing in this that sounds quite out of time to me. I'm not going to play the whole clip again. I'm just going to play the beginning bit and listen out for someone playing a bucket.
Yeah.
To my ears, that wanders horribly out of time. I've never noticed that there before.
It's it sounds like a more how to phrase it, like a more approachable. You know, the guy from Slipknot who just whacks that beer keg with a baseball bat. This sounds like the more kind of accessible version.
So the thing with the Slipknot, I saw something. Callus actually sent this to me. God, this is really becoming like a mates club, this podcast, which I'm all for. We've never tried to appeal to anyone other than ourselves. But he sent me a clip on Instagram. I don't know if he does this to you. And most of the time I know where he's coming from. But he sent me a clip yesterday, and it said me doing my Slipknot audition, and it was somebody with a metal pedal bin hitting it with a stick.
He has sent me this. Yeah, he sent me this.
He sent it to you as well.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just thought that must be. I've not studied Slipknot a lot, but I know they've got a bunch of drummers, and I was like, oh yeah, they've got a bunch of drummers. So they actually had somebody with a beer keg, did they?
Yeah, I think I'm not the world's biggest Slipknot fan, but I think that's like one of them is responsible for just thwacking a beer keg on the sort of offbeat occasion. It sounds really cool, but as responsibilities go.
That's not a bad job, is it? I mean, if you're getting paid even, Americans are very unionized. Even if you get union minimum, sort of whatever the American version of musicians union is, and your job is go on stage for shit, even if it's a 3-hour performance and twat a keg every now and then, that's not a bad way to make a living, is it?
It's not, but band practice must be really boring because it's just when do I hit the keg, and if we're going to try and do like a ballad, which I don't know if Slipknot that's really in their wheelhouse, but presumably he's got an opportunity in each song.
Well, at least with a beer keg, he's got something to sit on while he's waiting to thwack it. I always feel sorry for like when we're sitting around waiting for gigs on tour, which I haven't done a lot of. I was always quite pleased to be the bassist because I have quite a large hard case to sit on or lay on, but I always felt sorry for anyone who plays mandolin or something in a band because yes, you're not going to have any fun perching on a mandolin case, are you?
I'm just thinking about the loadout as well. Does he take his keg around with him, or if you're playing at venues that presumably serve alcohol, there must just be a rogue keg in the back that he can bring out?
That could get complicated because we used to rely on venues or pubs especially having beer crates to put your amps on, and they've gone away. You don't see
I've not seen a beer crate in a while. Yeah,
it's been a while. And I reckon if he's a really serious musician, like the joke about triangle players in orchestras actually being really, really good musicians, I'd like to think he not only has a favourite keg, but I'd like to think he's done with this keg what distilleries in Scotland do. So distilleries in Scotland, when they have to replace the stills, they 3D map the stills. And when they put the new stills in, they put dents and scratches in the surface.
Is that true?
The new still. It's completely true. Honest to God, it's true. There's a distillery on Islay called Ardbeg that went bust, and it was only out of business for a little while, but copper stills, there's a lot of money there. And it reopened, and they put the dents back in exactly the same places, and there's no scientific...
that's got to be like, it's got to be like superstition, hasn't it?
But I reckon keg player number 1 in Slipknot must be a similar kind of thing. Do you reckon he's got?
I think he's probably listening, and he'll be in touch.
I'd be offended if he wasn't listening, obviously.
But
I'd also like to know what advert he answered in the back of Melody Maker to get that gig.
Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, there's not many beer keg thwackers generally. Like, that's a very Slipknot specific role. It's not like he can jump and play for Metallica next week.
They had have other very specific roles in Slipknot, because there's also Dead Crow and a Jar Guy. I don't know if they're still doing that. Did you know about this?
I've not heard about it. Like I say, I'm not that familiar with Slipknot.
We've talked about Slipknot for about 6 or 7 minutes. Neither of us really know anything about them at all. The shit. We don't promise accuracy here. Now, allegedly, when they started, they had someone whose sole job it was. He had a dead crow in a jar, and he'd go up to the front row, in gigs, like very pushed, very crushed at the front, and he'd open the jar so that kids and fans could sniff the dead crow, and they'd all then start throwing up on each other, just to make
that's true. That's not like an urban legend that spiraled out of control.
I heard it from someone in a pub at a gig about 15 years ago, and have done no research. So as far as I'm concerned, it's completely verbatim truth.
That's gospel. Yeah, I agree.
Do you know what? I want to know now. I'm going to look up Slipknot. How do you spell Slipknot? All right, Slipknot, Dead Crow. Oh, God. Well, the first result is one of those Reddit threads that is a thread I don't really want to pull up. It's, did anyone go to the show with the dead crow where the fan ate the dead crow?
Oh, no, someone ate it. That guy became redundant real quick.
Yeah, actually, like, they fired him, and like the next advert in the back of Melody Maker is dead crow in jar guy must have good sense of security awareness or something.
Although, how hard is it to find a dead crow? I mean, you could probably replace the prop quite easily.
They're very, very smart creatures. My daughter's trying to train a crow. She's basing this on the fact she saw a crow in the street about a week ago and has had a pot with sunflower seeds by the front door since. But she's that generation where they learn a lot from TikTok, and she's pretty sure she's going to build an unwieldy army of the night before.
Is the crow returning? Do you see much of the crow?
It's been back about 2 or 3 times.
Because I've seen the videos where like a guy is driving in a car and there's crows following him, and he gets out of the vehicle to go to a supermarket or something, and he throws a lot of seeds over his shoulder. All the crows descend on the seed, so they just kind of follow this guy around who presumably is stocked with seed to keep this.
Just got bulging pockets for the seed.
No, I think there's a lot of truth in it. They're very smart creatures.
By that logic, so if they're making a connection between this human being, when he's around, food appears. Food appears in the air. It could be why they stopped throwing rice at weddings and switched to confetti, because otherwise every vicar in the country would have an unwieldy army of crows.
That's true, and that would be great for goth weddings, but I suppose that probably makes up like 1% of all weddings.
I've never been to a wedding where people like throw doves up in the air or whatever, but yeah, the idea that you like, no, it's got to be crows. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think some people go in for that.
I thought I was going to get a corvid pet, because there's a video online actually with a dubstep remix by one of my bandmates of, in our bedroom, I could hear this scratching, like, shit, birds falling down the chimney, and I've got a 150-year-old house. So I thought I can't have it there. I can't hear it like, the tapping gets slower and then just no. So I thought, right, okay, I'm gonna remove the board. Absolutely destroyed the carpet in the bedroom. I had to just get rid of it. But when I eventually managed to get into the thing, it was a magpie, and it flew straight at me and it hit the wall the other side, and there's still a mark there. We can't remove it. It's like the magpie version of the Turin Shroud. It's just like the face print of a magpie's face. And on the video, I filmed it because I thought, it's going to be something interesting to look at. But I completely lost my cool, and I thought it was a baby seagull at first. I completely lost my cool, and I just went, it's a fucking magpie! Get the fuck out of my house! And it flew at the window, and then sort of went and dropped, and then just went out. But I've been expecting it to come back ever since, just as a thank you for me saving its life, but it hasn't.
Is it one for sorrow?
What? One for sorrow.
Count? With the magpies, is that the animal that is that the
one
bird
sorrow,
that you count?
For joy.
Yeah.
3. Hey,
for a girl, 4 for a boy. Yeah, it's something like that. But yeah, if you only had the one, that's like cursed your house with sorrow.
Could be why we've got subsidence.
I think it's probably a direct link.
It did hit that wall pretty hard. Right, this is
music print.
Well, it's still there. Genuinely, tried to scrub it off, but can't do it. Had to get rid of the carpet. Right, so if you've never listened to Beat Motel before, I'd love to say that we normally talk more about music, but if you have listened to Beat Motel before, that's not true. But we do have a theme this week, and this is the theme off our long list, and it's chosen by you, Ollie. So would you like to explain the theme?
Well, I think you've kind of thrown me under the bus a little bit, because I suggested 2 themes, and this was actually my least. Because
I chose the wrong one, did I?
The theme is music or bands that have changed the way that we think. And I enjoy the challenge of this because I am not really influenced politically by music in the way that I would say most of my friends are, which makes it kind of fun, because it means like, well, what other ways can music change the way you think, if not politically, philosophically, socially, all the rest of it. But I think it's a cool theme, and I think with your punk credentials, you'll likely have some really cool suggestions. So I think it will be a great topic for both of us to kind of battle with.
Right, let's get into it. So this is Ollie's first choice. I think the first person ever to choose the end of a song as their excerpt. So for new listeners, we can only play 30 seconds of any track. Any more than that, and we're into possibly dicey territory. But because this is music commentary, we can play some. So Ollie, who was that?
That was a band called Saleontomorrow, which was a band tragically cut short by the passing of a bass player early on, and the reason I chose this song is because they were the first band I saw. They were originally from Norwich. I must have been 13 or 14. We were the support act, and they were the first band I saw that were fucking brilliant. And they were a local band. Before that, we were all having a go at making music, and there was a wide gulf between your friends' bands and the bands that you saw on TV or could listen to on CDs and things like that. But Saleontomorrow was the first band that I saw in person and was just like blown away by, and it made me think, well, yesterday I thought like the level of local bands and the quality that it can be exists somewhere around here. The day after, it was like, fuck me, this is possible. And also, like, they're just a band that I still find myself ripping off now. Like, I still want my guitars to sound like their guitars, even though they must have stopped making music nearly 20 years ago. And the reason I also chose this song, which I was hoping it wasn't going to be lost on you, is there was a pinched harmonic in the end section, which I knew recently as an avid fan of Beat Motel that you're a fan of the pinch harmonic. So I thought I'd throw you a little.
I do like a pinch
Easter egg.
harmonic, although I do think it is sometimes it's the musical equivalent of a clown with a squeaky nose going.
And there's a time and a place for that.
Exactly. No, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You know, this is true. My brother-in-law moved to Paris for 2 years and studied at clown college. I
can't top that.
It's not that. I should just say he won't listen, but it's not that kind of clown college. It's the same clown college that Sacha Baron Cohen and people like that went to. So it's like
oh, cool.
Yeah. Anyway, the bass. Funny you mentioned the bass actually, because the bass in that I think is probably louder than the bass I've ever heard in a song ever. Probably outside of Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah. And
when I was listening to it, I thought I'm just going to play a little bit of it again because I'll tell you what I thought afterwards. Like the volume goes up.
Yeah.
The volume of the bass really leaps up, and that sort of attention to detail in recording. So if they were about, say 20 years ago, that computers weren't really about. That's somebody really working hard in the studio. But
it's and it's EP. I think I don't think they ever released an album, at least not that I can find. And I still listen to that thing weekly. I think it's just on YouTube as well. It's just phenomenal, phenomenal
there's
band.
So much in there to like. And I thought when I heard it, I thought that sounds like a Music Man. I've looked it up, and it was a Music Man.
Oh, was it really? I would have said Precision, Fender Precision, but
it's more clank. I've got a Music Man and a Precision. I play Precision now because I want the dirty, grunty sort of sound, but that is a classic Music Man. It's just got so much more snap and twang to it. It's a much more modern sound. But when I wouldn't have placed this as early as it was because it sounds like a lot of the more sort of emo-y mathy stuff like Say a Sin that was a bit more kind of perhaps 2000.
This would have been just before that.
Yeah. So trailblazing band and brilliant. I'm going to look them up.
You won't regret it.
So
still
much
finding
about
stuff out.
So the singer part of that is what reminded me of Say a Sin's. Not Say a Sin. Yeah, Say a Sin is that the vocal that just sits so perfectly in the music. It's not like slapped on top. It's the timing of it and the tension and whatever makes it another instrument, which is how I ended up liking black metal. Once I realised you don't sit there penning down notes about the lyrics, listen as a texture.
And the singer from that band is now the vocalist for This Town Needs Guns, a much more kind of visible, if you like, math rock. I'm sure everyone hates hearing that term, math rock band, performing a similar kind of role. So he's still about.
Interestingly, this is an ultra geek point here. I think they don't appear to have a website because back early 2000s back, you just wouldn't. I mean, my band did because I'm a geek. So the bit that came up first on them is on a GitLab. Oh, GitLab! I thought it said GitHub. So I was going to be really impressed that their website was hosted on GitHub. It's like such a geeky point. No, it's not at all. Completely and utterly wrong.
That'd have been very ahead of themselves.
Yes, well done. So that was cool. That's I can absolutely see that, and I nearly chose the Refused for kind of similar reasons. Obviously not because they're local, because they're Swedish. But when I prepared this clip for this first choice of yours, I thought, he's going to say it's because it's math rock emo stuff, and I was going to choose the Refused for the same reason, but I didn't. Instead, for the first one, I'd love to say I'm rocking against stereotype and your expectations, but the first track is in fact this.
Drink, sex, cigarettes, for Cortina, household pets, bombs, wars, famine, death, and apathetic public couldn't get that. Public watches ITV, reads the sun, drinks cups of tea, a two-star family stay content, and life's controlled by Parliament. Well done, it's lost its job again.
Hey, do you know who that was?
Is that Against Me?
Oh, no. Oh, man. It's not Against Me, but you just saying that has just made me make a new synaptic connection in my brain between this band, the Subhumans, and
okay.
Against Me. Very, very different propositions. So this is early 80s, sort of proto-anarcho punk. So
Yeah.
a lot more of the sort of scruffiness. I think of British punk as in the 70s was like the slightly more contrived stuff, and then the early 80s it kind of got brought back into control by bands who weren't signing to majors and bands who were just living on the road and whatever. But I have chosen this for Beat Motel before, and it's the only time I've repeated something, but it's because it was a band that when I first heard them, it made me realise that there was a punk wasn't just people gobbing at each other. I kind of despised punk when I first started to get into music, mostly because I was a twee indie kid. So the idea of something having any raucousness to it at all was just really unappealing. Until I heard the Subhumans and really Stiff Little Fingers, but I thought Stiff Little Fingers would just be a bit sort of on the nose. But the lyrics for the first part of this, I may have mentioned on this podcast before, they ramp up so fast. So this is very of its time. Drink, sex, cigarettes, that hasn't changed. But then Ford Cortina, household pets, you're like, okay. And then bombs, war, famine, death. It's quite steep. The story arcs go. And just I find the lyrics slightly charming now because they seem quite simple. So the next is the public watches ITV, reads The Sun and drinks cups of tea. And it goes on so in much the same way, and then it's going on about daddy's lost his job and stuff. But I chose this because it was the first band that really changed my mind about punk and made me realize it's not necessarily a dumb sack of nihilists.
Yeah, see, the punk is such a massive blind spot for me. That was why Against Me was just like, oh, that's a punk band, right? That you guys talk about.
I probably mentioned to you loads of times. I mentioned on here,
but it's refreshing when I hear that stuff, and I should probably take care to go back and revisit it, I think. But then answer me this: do you think coming to that kind of thing later on, once you've kind of familiarized yourself with other types of, I don't want to say more sophisticated music because that's such a bullshit thing to say, but is it possible to appreciate the Subhumans in the same way you did when you first heard them, as I would now, having perhaps more of a kind of familiarization with other things? Do you know what I mean? Like, is part of that punk appeal the fact that it is this punch in the face, that is this kind of abrasive alternative to other things that were on the radio? No.
And that's genuinely a part of punk that I've never liked. I always thought it was quite childish and childlike to sort of get off on the aggression of it. And at punk gigs, the people who are clearly there because they like bumping into each other, playing bumper cars, are generally, in my opinion, a pain in the arse. I don't think a good punk crowd is one stroking its chin, but it's the context for me. And you struck upon something which I find really interesting, that you can never I don't think you can get into music through somebody else's context and how they discovered some things. So the whole point of this was you had this very quite polished Sex Pistols, and then it's only my mid-20s probably, I heard this and went, wow. And I found it really hard to overlook the crappy production at first. Then I just started to listen to more and more music and sort of became a lot more accepting of the scratchy, terrible production, and that happened because of the Dead Kennedys. But now I can't sort of project the excitement onto you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually something that perhaps you or Sam have said in a previous episode that really stuck with me. That was, if you asked most people about their favorite top 10 albums, 90% of them would have been albums they listened to as a teenager or when they were first discovering the music they now love. It's very rare that you encounter an album in your 20s or 30s and you think, this is so good, it pushes out something that I've listened to now for 15, 20 years. I think it's a difficult thing to do.
When that does happen, it's absolutely fantastic. It really is exciting.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It's probably one of the best things that you can have happen to you as a music fan.
Right, let's go for your second choice, which really surprised me.
Nothing makes me want to disappear is when someone opens their mouth.
hear felted piano in everything these days. Who was that?
That was Jim O'Rourke with Ghost Ship in a Storm. And the reason that he changed the way that I think is because not only does he make this kind of sickeningly sweet lounge music, he's made some great indie rock albums. He's also made some really, really out there kind of experimental, aggressive noise music. And what I love about Jim O'Rourke is the fact he just kind of embraces, he has all these dimensions. He'll do like a Spice Girls cover, and then he'll go over to Japan. I think he lives in Japan actually. And then he'll just do like some fucking 90-minute onslaught of atonal noise. I think that's fucking coolest thing ever, to have someone just be completely devoid of bullshit and pretension and be like, I'm just going to wake up and decide what kind of thing musically do I find interesting today. I'm just going to pursue that thing. I'm not going to kind of tether myself to being the experimental avant-garde guy or the kind of pop singer-songwriter. I'm just going to do whatever I like, and I'm going to do both really, really well. I think that's refreshing. I think people should pay more attention to Jim O'Rourke. And I think I meet so many people who are so serious about experimental stuff. And it's like, it's okay to admit that you do like a few pop songs. And I promise you, no one's going to think differently or that you have a lower IQ or whatever. I just think that's great.
Does he do it? Does he do all the different types of music under the same name?
Yeah, that's what's brilliant. You know, Jim O'Rourke.
That is absolutely what's brilliant. It's giving your audience the benefit of the doubt, giving them the intelligence to be able to decide that. I mean, how does this work? If he does a gig, do you literally go along not knowing what you're going to get?
See, that's a really good question, because it was kind of a toss up for me between this and Boris, because Boris do obviously the drone stuff, but they also do kind of J-pop sounding records. And I'm sure I read somewhere that if they capitalize the name, it means it's going to be a loud, heavy show. But if it's written with just like the capital B, the rest of the word is in lowercase, it means it's going to be a much more approachable set. I don't know how much truth is in that, but it would make sense. But yeah, that's kind of exciting, right? You know, you don't know if you're going to get what you like or perhaps what you don't.
I like that. Boris is one of those bands I wish I loved more, but I saw them supporting Russian circles at a university in London. I can't even remember which one it was. And the guitarist clearly just had her guitar. It wasn't going through the PA, but it was one of those
through front of house,
just from the amp.
Oh, it wasn't even going through a PA.
No, but it was one of those possibly 150 watt Marshall heads. You know, the old Marshall heads where 50 watt was enough to kill a man, and 100 watt was just like structural damage, and 150 watt is just like there is no practical use for that on the planet Earth. But she was so loud; she was louder than anything else. You could just hear the guitar, and it was cool. I mean, you know, if you're going to hear anyone play guitar very, very loud, then her guitar is the one to hear. But it just sort of spoiled the dynamic of it all, because it wasn't going through the PA. It was just getting lost. It was really loud, but it was just banging around. People were literally laughing about it. It sounded so bad, and I thought, no, I really want more from Boris. I'll definitely go and see him again, because that just seemed like a strange choice, and I like choices like that, but they don't always work out.
Yeah, I think they probably don't do that any longer, because I remember seeing not too long ago, it might have been Planning for Burial, or someone on Instagram had shared like a sound engineer's diagram for a Boris set, and it looked, I
love those.
Yeah, it looked much more sophisticated than simply put a fucking large amp on and turn it up. So
it was quite a long time ago. Oh, I'm not even going to try and guess, possibly 15 years ago. But yeah, Jim O'Rourke, it would make for a good playlist as well on Tidal or Spotify or something.
So I think, again, he's one of these other guys who, weirdly, his like avant-garde stuff is on Spotify, but his more approachable kind of indie rock singer-songwriter stuff seems to just exist either on CD release or YouTube.
I'm liking this guy more and more. I thought you were going to choose it because it's slightly countrified, and I thought you were going to say made you change your mind about country music or something.
No, I think I like the fact that he approaches a lot of his topics with irony, and you know, in that example I played, you know, the lyric is, and it's just my luck that I get hit by a car while carrying a cake, which I think is just, it's a really funny line. And I remember once back when I actually used Twitter, just kind of putting that up on Twitter, and a few people messaged me like, "Are you okay?" It's like, no, it's a lyric. Then get hit by a car. But he also, another kind of bit of trivia about Jim O'Rourke is he advised on School of Rock. So he advised,
Oh, really?
like all that kind of music history that Jack Black kind of gives to his students, I suspect is in part kind of Jim O'Rourke's input was considered, I guess.
Yeah, so he is American, and the pictures of him that have come up on Google, it looks nothing like he does in the video. Oh my god, he literally looks like someone who'd be really nice to sit down in a pub with and have a chat.
Oh man, there are a lot of podcasts. He's very generous with his time. He's very generous with his knowledge. If you listen to anything, sounds like a really cool guy.
Awesome,
and you can get lost in his discography. I promise you, you'll have such a great time going through it.
Oh, there's a lot. How many albums has he done? Bloody hell!
Yes, because he's not on the streaming sites, man. He's got all the time in the world just to make music.
Holy crap! He's done 6, 12, 18, 24, 27, and that's just the ones that have come up in the knowledge graph on Google. Sorry, this
and
is
engineered Sonic Youth as well. That's on some records, yeah.
All right, let's move on from John Rourke to this. Do you know who that was, Ollie?
I don't, but I loved that. That was really cool.
That was Against Me.
Oh, okay.
I really, when you thought the Subhumans were Against Me, I really had to hold it back.
I'm going to be ridiculed for that by people listening to this show. I don't think it's possible to.
It is bloody great. That is True Trans Soul Rebel, which is the chorus. True Trans Soul Rebel.
That's brilliant.
Charmingly, my wife thought the chorus was True Friends Forever, which is just kind of lovely. So I won't mock her for that. It's just very sweet. I chose that. I could list probably 30 reasons why Against Me changed the way I think. I chose this one specifically because Laura Jane Grace came out as trans in a very, very big way. They were on Fat, they're on a very small label, No Idea. Then they signed to Fat Wreck, and then they signed to Sire, and then the Sire thing just sort of fell apart. And that's the moment at which she took the step to come out as trans. And I can remember it didn't really change my way of thinking so much as open my awareness to transgender people or just the whole gender discussion. When Against Me played at Reading Festival, Laura Jane Grace had a T-shirt that just says "Gender is over." So it sort of changed the way I think, and I'd never had never anything negative around gender dysphoria or something. It was just it hadn't come into my world in any sort of way that I'd really thought about it. So it was educational. I can't think of any other way of putting it other than it brought something into my world that I then became educated about, and that's one of the coolest things about any punk band. But they if you want to listen to Against Me, they are genuinely one of those bands that you can start at the first EP and go to the last album, and you'll hear the progression the whole way through. But this album is such a joyous album because it's the first one when Laura Jane was Laura Jane, and it is just such a celebration, and it's talking about things in such a frank way that I just think it's great. Any discussion that me and Dr. Sam have on about Against Me just ends up with us running out of superlatives and going, yeah, they're great.
Are they still active?
More or less. Laura Jane very much is very active, very prolific musician. And Against Me, they're one of those bands that they never split up, but everyone in the band does a bunch of stuff. So, they'll come back together at some point. And if they do, come with us to go see them. I don't know anyone who hasn't enjoyed seeing them live.
It's, again, as I said, they are a massive blind spot in my sort of vocabulary, if you like. And I'm unsure why. I don't know. They feel like a sort of band that would have been around, like friends would have listened to. And I don't know. I think because at that time, I sort of approached music, like when I first got into it, almost like a middle-aged sort of ex-hippie. Like progressive rock, like Pink Floyd was like my thing. I loved Pink Floyd, and I sort of sneered at punk fans because I was like, oh, this is just like juvenile, drawing dicks on walls stuff. This is below the kind of
more or less
bombastic prog rock. And I think that I missed out on so much because of that completely insufferable attitude.
Yeah, well, I came from the same direction, but from the world of being an indie kid, and just there's so much intelligence in so much punk rock. That being said, Dr. Sam and I, for a few years, we cycled over to Antwerp to go to a festival called Brack Rock Eco Fest, which is a brilliant festival, but it's all kind of a very particular type of skate punk, and we've never lasted the whole festival because they all use exactly the same drum beat, and when you've heard it in like six bands in a row, you just kind of go, yeah, that's enough. Should we leave now?
So, yeah, I can see that.
As smart as it is, orange is not the only fruit, or whatever the phrase is. You don't have to don't have a whole day of it. That's why the last metal festival I went to in Helsinki, they had a band. I can't remember what they were called, but have you heard of that metal band called Ghost? They're like huge band. One of those bands you go, no, never heard of them. You look it up and go, okay, well, they're a multi-platinum selling band. But somebody left the band and formed kind of a techno act. And I saw them play at this metal festival, and it was so refreshing. It was really nice, like in the middle of the day, just to go and hear some techno.
I bet.
Like an amuse-bouche, like having a peppermint after eating something garlicky, just kind of like, oh, right, lovely and refreshed and ready for more.
Yeah, so I remember having a similar experience because there was, we're probably going back now 12 years, there was a small scene out of Kingston in London of like math pop bands. I wouldn't really call them math rock.
Math pop?
It's kind of, it was like 3 to 5 minute long songs where the time signature was changing quite regularly. They weren't repeating themselves in the traditional kind of verse chorus structure. But it was kind of approachable. Those changed, like the music wasn't abrasive or anything like that. But I had a similar experience where you would watch a lineup of bands doing that kind of thing, and by the end of the night, it's like, just give me a chorus. Just like, please give me something that I can rely on happening, every 16 bars. That would be great. You do kind of need a tonic sometimes.
How long ago did you say that was? About how many years?
I want to say it was 12 years ago. I can remember being sort of 2021 and it being at its kind of most vibrant in terms of just it became saturated at some point where there was just everyone doing it.
I think I played in Hoxton or somewhere around that time with These Are End Times, and we played with a band called Axes.
Yes, yeah, Axes is a perfect example. Yeah, I saw those guys. I think the first Arctangent, if not the second.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We did bring them to Ipswich for a gig, poor souls. Which wasn't very well attended, which I hate it when that happens. You like deeply love a band, bring them to your town, and you really struck. It's like, oh, it's raining, so people didn't come out to the gig. But even as human beings, they were super, super nice people. And I kind of accidentally got to know the drummer. The drummer was a bit of a jobbing drummer, and I mean that in a really, really nice way. Good drummers are very much in demand, so they end up being in a bunch of bands. And through a really odd series of twists of fate, I ended up giving him a lift to the last ATP festival that happened in Prestatyn in Wales.
Wow.
And he was also the drummer of Feeder for a while.
Really?
Which he doesn't like to talk about, but he's such a good drummer. He was basically, slotted into Feeder, I think for like a couple of tours or something, and then, taken out. But, again, paid to tour in a band. And I try not to be sniffy about any band, especially bands like Feeder, who I absolutely don't like, and I don't know what the appeal is. And it would be too easy for me to go, they're shit. Well, they're clearly not shit, because they sold it's like Shed 7, I feel the same way about. They sold a lot of records. You can't be shit. It just must be that I'm not seeing something that other people do.
Yeah, and I've just gotten to the point where it's been a long time since I was a student, and that's a time where it's kind of forgivable to sneer and to take an elitist pride in liking things that other people don't like. But as you grow older, I think you realize it's like that LCD Sound System lyric. He's like, if you're not having fun, you suck. I completely agree with that. I think if I notice people are enjoying something and they're not harming anybody, like, who am I to go like, well, that band's shit. Well, you don't like them, but these guys are getting a kick out of it and they're winning on balance because you're just miserable and they're having a great time.
That's possibly, I love LCD Sound System. I don't know which song that lyric's in, but that just increases my love for LCD Sound System. But I think a big part of
I think it's from Losing My Edge. But I could be wrong.
It would fit that vibe. But I sort of, the older I get, I generally feel that way about a lot of things in life. I was in Liverpool recently, and due to me being an idiot, I was stuck there for 4 or 5 hours waiting for a train. So I was just wandering around the front by the ferry to the Mersey and all that stuff. And the person I was with was commenting that we saw a bunch of different teenagers doing what I can only describe as TikTok dances. They sort of put the phone on the ground. They're all synchronized doing a dance. And the guy was like, what on earth are they doing? And I just thought, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Look how happy they are. What a lovely thing. Why would you sneer at something like that? They're clearly like bonding. They're creating something, and got the balls to be doing it in a tourist area out in public. More than we should celebrate it. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's taking some sort of, like I say, elitist pride. I just think it's the most nonsense thing in the world.
That's very cool. That is so on brand for this, as is this. So I'm not laughing at the music, just to be really clear. I just read the full track name of this in my notes, and I love it. Go on, who's that, Ollie?
That is Storm and Stress, but if you can read out the whole title, because I've not committed that to memory in all the years I've listened to it.
Meet me in the space they stare at, leaving their seat during a show. Just what? So meet me in the space they stare at. Who's they? So my first thought was that they are the band. Meet me in the space they stare at, leaving their seat. Oh no, I've just twisted my brain into pieces. Go on, tell me about Storm and Stress.
Storm and Stress. Where to start? So this is kind of so my best friend Ben, who played drums in the band I was in for the better part of my 20s. He was just like all over the internet in terms of finding cool new music, and he is chiefly responsible for the music I listen to and make today. And Storm and Stress are a band that is a side project to Don Caballero, which more people will be familiar with.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
As soon as you say that, it's suddenly like, okay, that
makes sense.
Yeah.
Ian Williams, the guitarist from Don Cab, Storm and Stress, is now obviously in Battles.
Really?
Yeah, that's the kind of... I'm not sure of the timelines. I'm not sure if Don Cab and Storm and Stress coexisted or if one came slightly before the other. I'm not sure, but this band was one that, I mean, if you listen to it, like, even when I listen to it now, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of ridiculous. Like, it's fucking mad. And it was something we paid attention to because we were like, well, the guy's in Don Cap, so this has got to be like, there's got to be something to it. And it was kind of the gateway drug into like more experimental music. I don't think you end up listening to Merzbow or, Hannah Tarish or one like that without first having steps towards it. And I think this was the first time I heard a band
gateway drug.
Yeah, but this makes, and it still makes very little sense to me. I enjoy it, but it's so unlike anything I'd heard before. It's kind of this kind of fractured, sounds like each sort of musician is playing a different song, but they somehow coalesce and
It
works.
It's a bonkers thing because I've tried not for many years, but I've tried very deliberately, making music that's deliberately odd in a band. And if you've played in bands or you have any sort of musical ability, you can't do it. This has to be
true.
This has to be written, because you can't do it because you're so trained to fix things, to make things snap in, not even in tune, to make things fit the time signature. All of that, I genuinely believe, if you try and make something deliberately odd, it just sounds shit. Whereas when you hear this, some people might think it sounds shit subjectively, but it's not. And I think that's what blows my mind. That's where the real genius of this is.
Yeah, but I think it was like, it's that kind of, okay, well, there's got to be something here, and it's perhaps on me that's not getting it. Because if other people like it, I can't imagine that thousands of people are posturing and claiming to like something to look interesting. No,
I think peanut butter's awful, but a lot of people seem to like that.
They can't all be wrong. But yeah, it's just I come back to this all the time. I really like it, but it's I remember the first band I heard where I was like, what the fuck is that? And not in a kind of, that's really heavy or that's really extreme, just kind of, it just sounds so wrong on lots of levels, but in a weird way kind of sounds interesting. So yeah, and then you get into all other kinds of things. You start reading more kind of experimental literature or films or whatever, and you have more patience for it than you once did. So yeah, it's a great album. It's a really, really great album. But yeah, that's probably how it shifted in perspective.
More patience for it is a really interesting way of describing it. I think it can introduce more of a hunger to find out why. Find out why you like it. Because against me, I love them. I could tell you 100 reasons. Very easy for me to love because it's actually quite straightforward. And when you listen to the band, you've got the joy of unpicking loads of other complexities that are in there, but they're all quite on the surface. Whereas things like that, when I first heard Storm and Stress and Meet Me in the Space They Stare At, leaving their seat during a show, it sounded to me, it's one of those bits of music that almost inspires imagery in my head. It sounds like dripping music, dripping water or something dropping down in the way that, you imagine how a raindrop drops between branches of a tree, and if each one of them played a note, I'm getting more out of this sort of thing now than I ever have. So thanks for introducing me to that one.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. Like I say, I hope you enjoy the rest of it. If you give the rest of the record a chance.
Just got to find out when, because I can't work when I'm listening to music like that. So here in glamorous Beat Motel Studio 1, I've got huge old retro speakers, and I've got, actually, I'll show you. Sorry, this won't mean anything on the podcast, but if you're watching on video, I've got like an early 80s Cambridge audio amp. That's just the studio interface. Got this old Akai tape player, which has only been there for a little while. At home, got speakers rigged up throughout the entire house, but at home, Storm and Stress would very much come into the category of being the forbidden music.
Personally, I find it really great to listen to when traveling. I find when I'm on the train, it's a really good opportunity to listen to them.
I have to go on a train journey again. If I put something on like that at home, if either my daughter or my wife are there, I just hear, no, just no.
Yeah, it's not really like background music for cooking or anything like that. That's fair.
So yeah, I look forward to hearing more of that at some point. Right, I'm going to play my choice. You might know what this is, Ollie. Oh, it's horrible cutting things like that short. That's 30 seconds from the middle of a track that's maybe 16 minutes long. Do you know who that was?
As a newcomer to stoner rock, I'm going to guess it's Electric Wizard.
Oh, no. I wouldn't call this stoner rock at all. I thought this would be more in your wheelhouse, slightly not really mathy, slightly proggy though. It's Pelican.
Oh, it's Pelican. Okay.
Yeah. It's horribly compressed and mangled through the magic of podcast recording. But I chose this because it's the first thing that ever got me into double kick drum. Until I heard this, and it's old. Oh, sorry, the song is March into the Sea. And before this, anything had a double kick drum, it was an immediate no. Just
really,
no.
this really surprises me.
And this is, I'm going to look at when it was, but I'd say this is probably about 2006. I'll just look it up on Wikipedia. And the build up, that's at the 6 minute mark, that when that riff comes in, the build up to that is such a thing of beauty. There's live footage of it on YouTube from video they released, and the way the guitarist plays, it also changed my mind about SGs. And he's the reason I own an SG. He's the reason I own a plain walnut SG, is the guitarist of Pelican. But the way he plays, it just looks like he's polishing the guitar. Doesn't look like he's actually happened to do any work. It looks like he's absent-mindedly polishing. But yeah, that riff with that double kick, I just went, yes, I need more of this in my life.
And then you just were like blast beats the whole way.
Yeah, now it's just like it's just black metal and just everything. So yeah, that was just a really basic choice, but that changed the way I thought about double kick drums.
Oh, it's a reasonable choice. It's great. It sounded great. I feel like Mark Corrigan. You know that episode of Peep Show where they have to play guest the band, and he just does abysmally. You've never seen it?
Do you know what? I haven't seen it to the extent that Jay and Callis, both of whom have been co-hosts on this, have threatened to have an intervention.
It seems like a cultural point that, I would expect that just would be in your locker.
My wife and I started trying to watch it. I was right. 2005 for Pelican, March into the Sea. My wife and I started trying to watch it last week, and I don't know if it's aged badly or we just don't get it, but the level of cringe in the first couple of episodes it's too steep for
it. And it doesn't get better.
It doesn't get better.
It doesn't get better. No, that's the one thing I'll say for that show. It's great, but it's also overwhelmingly bleak, and there are very few wins. So it can become like, if you want to chill out and watch some television, it's not a show that's going to give you that kind of feel good factor. It's just going to be awful.
It might be more something that I watch gradually over like many years, like Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad took me forever because my wife, each time she walked in and saw some of it, she'd just be like, what?
I get it.
Sorry, there's no joy here. She's starting to come around on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. She kind of gets that they're all irredeemably horrible.
Once you get that, then the show
once
makes
you get
sense.
that, you know the shtick, right? We're running a bit short on time, so I need to go for your last choice here. Do you ever hear music for the first time and you think, I love that so much, I want to make that music?
It's exactly my response to Dettinger.
Who is it? Sorry?
That track was Dettinger, I think is how it's pronounced. The guy's name's Olaf Dettinger.
Oh, I've put it in the wrong way. I've just got to correct my notes because I put Dettinger as the song name.
I think it's Untitled 6 or Intershop number 6. The record it's taken from is called Intershop. Each track is not named. And also, I'll wrap up real quickly. The background voices you hear in that clip aren't on the original. That was just from the YouTube production of it I could find. But simple, it was a very literal response to the brief of music that changes the way you think. When I listen to that music, my head goes to like a dark suburb at night, just has like this really calming effect. That's where it goes. And brilliant record.
Opposite end of the spectrum for me. That's light and airy, sunshiny.
Are you serious?
And I don't know why. It could be because it reminded me of when I first started. There used to be a record shop in Ipswich, which I'm fairly sure was a front for drug money, but they only sold Mo Wax records, and this is before DJ Shadow became massive, And
Right.
you could buy any record on Mowax and you'd get that vibe. And it's probably because it reminds me of a time in my life when I was 15 or 16 more than anything else, because it was that joyous time of finding shops that sold music that was like that.
I just find it very nocturnal. I think it's great.
I love that. I'm absolutely going to look up more of that. That absolutely connected with me. Just instant, completely instant. So not a million miles away. I'm going to go for my last choice. So Silky. Oh, do you know who that was?
I think that was Against Me, and
You win. That was Rival Consoles, who is a person. I think he's called Justin. It's a person who I've seen live so many times, and I can never get anyone else interested in going to see them. I managed to drag Matt along, who we both know. We went to the Barbican a few months ago. I've seen him so many times, but he changed my mind about the way I record electronic music. I think a lot of people sort of discover John Hopkins and then discover Rival Consoles afterwards, or I sort of came the other way around of it. And it just changed the way I thought about production, about how you can make it like so lush, which I've never managed to do, but how you can make it so lush. It's almost like something you could put in your mouth and bite. It's just.
I think you do yourself a disservice. I like hearing that. It kind of made sense to me now that the music you make. Not that I was confused by it before that, but I am. Kind of, no, but I saw the leap off point. You play kind of punk bands and then you play Rival Consoles. It kind of makes sense to me. The kind of trajectory of music you've made.
Cool. That's very kind of you. Well, we have run over, but only by a little bit, but we're still going to have to wrap it up. Ollie, I really appreciate your time. This has been a lot of fun. We've covered
Thanks for having me.
Dead Crows in Jars to every band sounding like Against Me. It's been fantastic.
A great Friday.
Cool. I'm going to say goodbye. Would you like to say goodbye? Oh, wow.
Yeah, goodbye.
How are people going to find out about your music? We should do that, really.
I seem to just kind of exist on Instagram. So Anrufen Music is where you can find me. Is ANRUFEN Music.
I like that you had to think about it.
I've seen it written incorrectly so many times on gig posters, and now I'm starting to doubt myself when I've
had to write my listeners. My stage name's Mar and Skell. I've had to write it on a piece of paper above my desk at home because I kept writing.
Yeah, yours is way more tricky. Yeah,
Mar and Skell. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye. Do you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye, everyone, and it's been thanks for having me again. Really enjoyed this.